You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast produced by Veteran Strategies and featuring conversations with fascinating and impactful men and women who have shaped our world, our communities, and our history. My name is Robert Vane, Principal of Veteran Strategies, and your host for our discussion. You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, a local veteran public relations enterprise, and sponsored by Girl Scouts of Central Indiana, Garmon Construction, Leaders and Legends LLC, the Grand Hall and Conference Center at Historic Union Station, the McGinley's Golden Ace Inn, and McAllister Machinery, your friendly neighborhood Caterpillar dealer. You may find all your sales and rental equipment needs at McAllister.com. We are pleased to announce our podcast is now a member of the All Indiana Podcast Network in partnership with Wish TV. You may find Leaders and Legends at allindianapodcastnetwork.com. Thinking of starting a podcast or need to host a public meeting? Let Leaders and Legends LLC be your partner as you look for new ways to communicate your message. Please contact Chris Spangle and me at leadersandlegends.net. Thank you for joining us on the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our guest today is Brad Chambers. Known him for a long time, one of the best leaders this state has produced, certainly of his generation and others. He was appointed as Secretary of Commerce in summer of 2021, CEO of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and he also serves as a member of former podcast guest, Governor Eric Holcomb's cabinet, and helps lead the state's economic development efforts. He's also the founder, president, and CEO of Indianapolis-based Buckingham Companies. Chambers has led the strategic direction of the company since he started it as a student, which is in quotations in my personal notes based on your comments at the IBJ luncheon, or breakfast, which we'll talk about.
You got it.
Since he started it in 1984 at Indiana University. Buckingham has grown from its first rental property purchase to the development and acquisition of its investments, exceeding $3 billion. In addition to his role at Buckingham Companies, Chambers also serves as a founder and board member of the Buckingham Foundation, which to date has awarded more than $2.5 million in grants and sponsorships to more than 600 nonprofits. He also serves on too many boards to count. Brad Chambers, thank you for coming on the podcast.
Hey, it's so nice to be here. Thank you.
You're a Hoosier kid, born and bred.
I am indeed.
What does that mean to you when you go to other states and you talk to folks? Do you notice there's a difference between you and them based on being a Hoosier?
I will tell you some of the best advice I got from a dear friend of our families and a dear friend of my father's when I was at IU, and I was in town, he was in town, we were walking around the circle, and I was pondering my future. I was buying and in the real estate business at that point. And he said, and this is a gentleman who's been super successful. He owned WIBC at that point in time, actually. He was a radio and television business person, super successful. And he said to me, my only advice to you is you've got this great city and this great state and this great network. He goes, you should take a couple of years and go live somewhere else, because when you go live somewhere else, you then appreciate where you come from. And I took that advice, and in the middle of my entrepreneurial journey, I took 2 years and I moved to California, and he was exactly right. I remember the beautiful sunny California day, Sunday, walking out of church, and it just dawned on me I'd had enough of the California ways, and I yearned for really refocusing on the business that I'd started. But I yearned for Indiana and the Indiana ways and the Indiana values. And so that was good advice.
You're a graduate of Lawrence Central,
I am.
1982.
Yeah.
And IU class of 86, which means you got to IU after they won the national championship in 81 and graduated before they won the national championship in 87.
That's right. That's right.
But you were there the summer of 84 when the Olympic team was there.
Yes. It was
Do
incredible.
you remember that at
Yeah.
all?
Yeah.
We had John Wertheim, who is the executive editor of Sports Illustrated. He was on the podcast.
Oh, neat.
He's from Bloomington.
Sure, for sure.
And he wrote a book about that summer. Do you remember that summer very well?
I do. And it was the Bob Knight era. I mean, it was an incredible era to be at IU, right? To be in Indiana University, and basketball was at its zenith, if you will. And so the Olympics and just that whole era was really fun and interesting to be around all of it.
Everybody I know who went to IU would go back to IU right now, whether they're 30, 40, 50, 70.
That's right.
How much fun did you have?
Oh my gosh! I mean, that's why at the Engage event when I described myself as a student, I said that's a disservice to the definition of student, because Bloomington, there's lots of ways to learn, right? And books is just one. And so the learning, the social learning, the experience that Bloomington provides, the university provides, my entrepreneurial journey provided. It's just a fabulous place. It just is.
And there are, and we've had them on the podcast, a good selection of them, a tremendous number of IU alums who have impacted this city and state. Jim Morris, Jim Kittle, Randy Tobias, David Frick, the list goes on.
The list goes on.
How did you get to know them anyway? I guess we should mention our friend Nate Feltman,
Right.
former podcast guest.
Yeah.
Did you get to know them kind of through the IU connection a little bit? Alumni or just games, events?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to, right? Now, IU alums are everywhere, and as you said, they're forces for good in our city, in our community, in our state. And so, absolutely, in Jim Morris is larger than life. His contributions to our city, and he's, I mentioned mentorship the other day at Engage. I mean, speaking of our best mentor in the state, that Jim Morris just stands high, and his IU passion and conviction and support, man, we're just so fortunate. You
can tell I'm not into politics much because I left out my former boss, Greg Ballard.
Yeah.
IU class of 78.
That's right.
I want to talk to you a little bit about the IEDC and then kind of get back to it. But I ran into you a couple, 3 months ago. I was walking outside of the IRT and kind of smiled at you and said, "So you were looking for a part-time gig?"
The weather was warm. I believe it was a warmer day, and the sun was shining. And you looked at me with that smirk, and you said, and that smirk was, "You may not be getting smarter as you get older." I think that was your smirk. That's what I read, your facial expression, and I think you were right on that one. I may not be getting smarter as I get older.
Many of us who've worked in the public sector did so or do so because they can't say no.
Right. Yeah.
So you got a call from Governor Holcomb.
Right.
Did you have any inkling kind of that the call was coming, and how hard was it to say yes?
Well, it was, nothing comes at the right time in life, right? Or in many instances, the good things in your life don't come at the right time. And so some people say no, but I pondered it. I went home and slept on it. And it was interesting, because I think my career history and my career experience lent itself to this opportunity, this job, this opportunity to serve. But it was just not planned, and it was completely unexpected. And quite frankly, I just didn't think I was ready to leave the business I've been working on for decades, and went home and slept on it. And as I did, I let the space get in there a little bit. Nothing ever comes at the right time, number one. Number two, is consistent with my values of community service. And and the company's values. And so we got to yes, and I'm glad I did.
When I was negotiating, if that's the right term, to come to the administration, to leave Shield Section to go to the Ballard administration, it was not so much about the job, even though it was intriguing. I'm sitting here, I'm going to take a $35,000 pay cut and work twice as many hours completely in the public eye. Right?
Yes.
So that part you can't rationalize.
That's correct.
It's the person.
That's right.
It was Greg Ballard and it was Paul Okeson. How much of your decision was influenced just by what a terrific person Eric Holcomb is?
Yes. That is such an essential question, right? So one of my biggest blessings other than my family is that I enjoy the work I've done for over 3 decades, and I enjoy the people I've done it with. That is my just incredible blessing. And so enjoying your work, enjoying the people you do it with is it's a value for me, and it's a guiding light. And so to your point, he is a terrific guy. And he is a good leader, and he knows, how to let people do their job. And so it was very, very important for me in getting to yes, is that the opportunity to work with him and have and support his vision and try to put points on the board for Indiana and all Hoosiers.
You're listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our guest is Brad Chambers, Secretary of Commerce and CEO of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. So let's go back for a little bit because I didn't want to bury the lead about your new job. On other podcasts that I've been on, which I've been a guest, or when I've hosted them and talked to others, because you and I are basically contemporaries. You're 4 years older than I am. I have said before, growing up in the 70s and 80s was the greatest influence in my life.
Right.
How much fun was it when you look back as you're a kid and you had those great years, the 70s and the 80s, and they seemed like they were so much fun? Do you think about, wow, what a great time to be a kid and what a great time to be an adult, a young adult?
I mean, my son is 25, and I'm, obviously I was there every step of the way for his coming of age, and I compare his coming of age in the times that we're in now in the 90s and 2000s, and I look back on mine, and I don't want to tell him how much fun I had. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. I mean, it was just a different day and a different age, and your parents weren't as hovering as we are today, and I include myself in that category, unfortunately, but it was a blast. We're roaming the neighborhoods literally and figuratively, getting into trouble, but also creating ways to be industrious and contributing to the world, just figuring it out, but having a blast with your friends. So it was a great time, is to answer your question.
And I don't think the young folks, I have 3 kids, 32, 21, and 18, and you talk to them and it's the no curfew. It's the complete freedom. I'm going to be on my bike for 3 hours and I'll see you at dinner time and no checking in and that sort of thing. Yeah. Is that kind of what you're describing?
Oh my gosh. We never locked the house, and keys were always in any car. If you wanted it, you could take it. I mean, that's right. I'm off on my bike and I didn't talk to my parents for 8-10 hours in a day. I couldn't fathom that when my son was 15 or 12 or 10.
Do you have a favorite movie from your childhood? A favorite toy? A favorite TV show? Did you have a Farrah poster?
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh my God, an Elton John poster and a Farrah poster. I mean, who didn't have a Farrah poster? Holy cow! Yeah, I mean, yes, I did. I had all that. It was a blast. It just was.
One of the things that all of us of that era will talk about when we have a chance is how much Indianapolis has changed. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I had told you, even as a young entrepreneur, let's say late 80s, maybe before you went to California or maybe when you just came back, in 2012, Indianapolis will host the Super Bowl and will completely redefine what it means to host a Super Bowl, you would have said,
I would have said, I don't believe it, right? I mean, when we were in our youth and we were 16 driving cars, or 17, and Indianapolis was just different. There was good people working on it, right? Because that's what it turned out to be today, is the Jim Morrises of the world were working on it, and the Dick Lugers and the Hudnuts and the all those fantastic leaders we've had. But it did it, and that's the. By the way, that's the reinforcement of, civic contribution, and is that you can make things happen. You can make things better.
And seeing people like Jim Morris, who's come on the podcast a couple times actually, and others Tom Benford, the list goes. I remember Tom. Mark Miles, the list goes on and on of the people who were. Of course, we should have to say, and I'm P.E. McAllister. Being at the top of the list.
Yep.
Was that a model for you in some ways? Like, look, they're businessmen, they're entrepreneurs, they're making a living, they're creating jobs, but they're still finding time to be on the State Fair Commission, to be involved in the arts or some other nonprofit. You look at those people and if they can do it, then I can do it.
100%. 100%. They were role models for me growing up. Andre Lacey, Tom Benford, Steve Goldsmith, right? Bill Hudnut. And those were public servants, and then all the people who contributed their time outside of work, and in partnership with our public servants. It was a powerful combination, and it has driven our city for decades.
And one of the things that's come through in the interviews that we've done is how completely nonpartisan things were.
Correct.
I remember P.E. McAllister telling me at lunch that the politics never came up. He was the president of the CIB for a long time. And in other meetings and things he had done, he's like, there was no discussion of, ooh, this is an advantage for X or for Y. That was all left outside the room. Has that been your experience as well?
In my short 5 months?
Well, you've also been involved in the Art Museum, the State Fair Commission. You've done so many things that involves convening people with disparate views and backgrounds.
Yeah.
And when I was doing the messaging, the PR for the Capital Improvement Board, I didn't see a single argument, not a single one in 5 years. And that taught me something as I was watching it happen.
Yeah, I think it's affected Indianapolis less than it has on a national landscape, for sure. I think there's a tinge of it today, a little more than we'd like. But generally speaking, I agree with you that it was community first and politics second.
Is there a particular event that you witnessed as an entrepreneur in Indianapolis that said, this isn't the city I grew up in? And I have a suggestion, but I don't want to preempt your answer because it's something we've heard several times. But is there one thing that you were like, I can't believe this is happening here?
In a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah. Oh yeah. When we built a football stadium without a football team. I mean, how progressive and entrepreneurial and innovative and outside of the perception of no leadership, right, or lack of leadership or quiet leadership. Man, was that a statement. And look how it turned out. So, I'm in the risk business as an entrepreneur. I've been in the risk business since I've been a 20-year-old, and government doesn't do risk very well. I said the other day, they're defensive, not offense. But that was a statement. That was a new day for our city, and it was hats off to everybody involved.
The other event besides that one that's come up several times, and we've done a couple of podcasts where it's really been central, was the Pan Am Games in '87.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Good point on that.
Mark Miles went on about, and I think so did David Frick and some others, that when we were able to, Ted Boehm, who came on the podcast, who was the chairman of the event, just saying that for us to be able to do that in that such a truncated time period and knock it out of the park really put Indianapolis on the map.
It did. And it was international too. So yeah, that's a really good example as well.
You are listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, a local veteran public relations enterprise, and sponsored by Girl Scouts of Central Indiana, Garmon Construction, Leaders and Legends LLC, the Grand Hall and Conference Center at Historic Union Station, the McGinley's Golden Ace Inn, and McAllister Machinery, your friendly neighborhood Caterpillar dealer. Our guest today is Indiana Secretary of Commerce, Brad Chambers. Brad, you mentioned Jim Morris, so pushing him aside for just 1 second.
Sure.
Is there a Hoosier leader and or legend you particularly admire?
There's a lot of them. Herman B. Wells, going back to IU and his leadership down there and what he did. I always loved Tom Binford too. He was such a quiet leader, right? He was a big force, but a super understated individual. We've had good governors as well, but I would say just Herman B. Wells and then Tom Binford.
We've not had him mentioned before, surprisingly. Mm-hmm. Usually the answer, quite frankly, is Jim Morris. He gets 80% of the answer, and deservedly so.
Yeah.
I was at your speech a few weeks ago at the IBJ breakfast, and you mentioned starting a business while at IU.
Yes.
Why did you decide to start a business while you were busy studying?
I didn't think about it. I think I truly, I loved working. And in our landscaping business, I don't know how, and I said it, how many people, you take a poll and it's like 90% of people were in the landscaping or cutting lawns when they were teenagers, right? We all did it. And it's such a great way to learn. But that business that I started with 3 pals when I was 15 and they were 16, I couldn't even drive the trucks that we owned. I didn't have my license, but we built the business, and we were cutting apartment complexes, oddly, at that point in time. But it was a real business, billing, reasonable dollars for a bunch of teenagers. We were borrowing money from banks. We were dealing with customers at 16 years old, mad customers as well as happy customers. and we had to collect, and we had to fix stuff, and we had to go bind insurance and borrow money. It was, but we were doing it outside in beautiful weather with people you enjoyed. And so the lesson from that, it was when you're having fun, it's not work. And that just, so when one of the partners came to me and came to us and said, I want to buy the business from this group, we were like, sure, I'm a sophomore. I've been cutting grass for 5 years, 6 years now. I can be really happy not doing that for another summer. Took the proceeds, and then Buddy and another good friend of mine, we took our proceeds and we went and bought a rental property at IUPUI. It was within months. So there was no downtime. It would have been easy to spend that money too, by the way.
Oh, sure. Did you? So at 15, I was figuring out a Rubik's Cube, and you had a significant business. So my mother was relatively proud of me when I figured out the Rubik's Cube.
Yeah.
How proud were your parents of you when you showed this entrepreneurial bent?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. They were, and I know they were, but it wasn't a big conversation. It was like, clean your stuff up out of the driveway. I don't want that lawnmower and all the blades in the middle of the driveway when Dad comes home. That was the conversation. But I will tell you one story though that you'll love. Okay, if we got time,
sure,
we have one time. So when you have a landscaping company, and this is how much, how proud my mother was, by the way. So when you have a landscaping company, you plow snow in the winter. Right. And so I was plowing snow in the winter. I had accounts, and I was plowing snow, and it was actually snowing back then. It doesn't snow that much anymore. I'm out on a ski trip with my Lawrence Central folks. I think it was either that or freshman year, and big snowstorm hits, and I can't fly back. I can't fly back because of snow, and the airports are shut down, and my clients are furious. And there's no cell phones back then. I don't think there was, or they were really early, one of the two. So I called my mother from the Motel 6 in Copper Mountain, I think. And I said, okay, I need you to plow my lawns plow my accounts for me. She goes, what? I need you to plow plow my counts for me. And so I walked her through how to use the plow. And, it took me I did get a flight. I got home like 8 hours later. And then I had to go on the search in the city. Where is she? Because she's out plowing my accounts. And I found her at this restaurant on State Road 37, now Benford Boulevard, by the way. And she's out there, the restaurant owner is in the right seat. My mom is in the left seat, plowing this huge parking lot. And I pulled up on her, and I'm like, and this guy, and they're having this beautiful conversation. The restaurant owner had pity on her, so he got in, and they're doing this thing together. And she rolled down the window. It was a crank, so it wasn't even electric windows, right? It was my old pickup truck I bought for nothing, and a plow blade on it. She looked at me and she was smiling, and she goes, "This is kind of fun. This is now I know what you do on the weekends, or on the and why you're so busy." So, I could see in her whole being that she was proud of what I had done through these lawns and through the snow removal business. And it tells you a little bit about her too, by the way.
Did she get paid?
I probably stiffed her. I probably stiffed her. I mean, you're living at your parents' house, you're not paying rent, you're collecting all this money, but she still loved me anyway.
Was there a point when the company took off, when you were like, okay, now this is a whole nother level of success, one that, whether it's Buckingham, whatever, yeah. And you're like, oh my gosh.
You talking the landscaping company?
Just in general in your entrepreneurial career where you, I'm not going to say look at your bank statement, but I mean, yeah. I guess that's one way to put it, or you think about how busy you are, how successful you are, and you're like, right. This is beyond what I ever thought.
It's so incremental. I mean, it's been such the landscaping company. No, we just worked hard. Kept your head down. You work hard, and it was still a small business. I mean, it was still a really small business, but we employed 4, 5, 6 people a year in addition to the 4 partners, and then the Buckingham journey's been long and slow too. But it's been, and I used this term the other day at the Engage event, and it's my hope and dream for the state is quality over quantity. Mm-hmm. We've focused on the quality of the journey versus the quantity of the journey. I think if I was less concerned, and the team here was less concerned about quality, we could be larger from a quantity perspective, right?
Was there someone who we all have people whose presence in our lives, or someone who could have hired us or not hired us, and they make a decision that changes your life? Was there someone like that for you who you would describe as a mentor, or things changed? I mean, other than your wife, of course, mm-hmm. But mm-hmm. Things changed when I met him or her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had 2 or 3 in my life, and again, the reason that mentorship is so important. Joe Amaturo, who owned WIBC, has always been, and he's 98 or 99 right now, years old, and he's still trucking. And I'm going to go see him here soon. But he's been a constant mentor for me, for sure. And there's been others along the way, but super successful person, very grounded, wise beyond his years, was in the war, went to Harvard. So I've been blessed with that, and I hope for others it's that they have mentors that can affect the trajectory of their life.
And it seemed to have been part and parcel with the growth of Indianapolis that there was a class of people who worked really hard to be helpful to the generation behind them, because one of the things that has come out of the podcast is like, that's the only way we can keep this going, is if P.E. McAllister mentors David Frick,
yes, right,
or Evan Bai, who just came on the podcast, whose 4 chiefs of staff are Bill Morrow, Joe Hogsett, Bart Peterson, and Fred Glass. Like, there's that connection that, like, that's part of being involved in this city.
Right. And I made a comment the other day about a closed source versus an open source system. Someone used that term on me this year about an entrepreneurial ecosystem. And they referenced it in the terms of closed source or open source, which is a computer term. It's a technology term. It's closed source software, which is it's not accessible, or open source, which is shareable and shared. And I use the term I hope for the state of Indiana's entrepreneurial ecosystem to be open source and a sharing environment.
Leads me right into my next question. We're talking with Indiana Secretary of Commerce, Brad Chambers. We all read the statistics on small businesses that fail. Yours has grown, has been successful. Can you point to one or two reasons why? And those reasons why, do you hope to cast that net across Indiana to help the entrepreneurial ecosystem throughout the state?
Yeah. I've thought about that question a lot over the years. And I think Indiana is special in that regard. There were, when you're starting a capital intensive business like ours, you need to borrow money, and you need to borrow it responsibly. And there was some lenders along the way and some bankers along the way that lent us money, and it was a character loan. And we don't, you don't hear about character loans anymore, right? And those were character loans, and obviously repaid successfully. But I hold those bankers, and John Holden is still lending money today, and we're a customer of his at Busey Bank, and he was one of those guys that and it wasn't a lot of money, but it was enough for a very small business when you're in your 20s. To make a huge difference. And that's the Indiana that I'm so blessed to have grown up in and started a business in. That someone, and there's a gentleman by the name of Lamar Richcreek at People's Bank back in the 90s, early 90s. And he did the same thing. And I remember the names. That's a long time ago.
I believe it.
Because they made a difference. They made a difference from a guy not being able to realize his entrepreneurial dream to a guy being able to realize his entrepreneurial dream and build a bigger business that employed people for decades like we have now.
We did a podcast last year about the career of Bill Hudnut. Mm-hmm. And one of the guests was a fellow named Dave Arlen.
Yeah.
And he made the comment that back when Hudnut was mayor, most of the banks in Indianapolis were headquartered in Indianapolis.
That's right.
And they were invested in Indianapolis's growth.
That's right.
That's not the case in a lot of ways anymore.
Right.
Do you think that does make a difference? Because, you're talking about the people who are helpful for you, and it's the people who are kind of controlling the purse strings a little bit. Would you like to see more banks headquartered here, more native?
I would. I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately. Maybe we can. There are some local homegrown banks, though. So I'm not going to say that. You've got Merchants Bank and Mike Petrie, the CEO founder of that, with Randy Rogers. Those guys are really deep rooted in this community and doing a terrific job.
Mickey Maurer, obviously.
Mickey Maurer, yeah, exactly. Bank of Indianapolis. We're customers of both those. But yes, it would be the more homegrown banks, the better, for sure.
Would it be fair to say that you have a soft spot for the entrepreneur?
Oh my gosh, yeah. That journey is my journey. Yeah, absolutely. And not only that, I think it's good business for the state of Indiana. It's really good business. And that's why I'm doing my best. And Governor Holcomb is very supportive about, lifting up and shining a spotlight on entrepreneurship in our state and nurturing entrepreneurship and shining a light and fertilizing it.
One of the things you detailed in your breakfast speech, the IBJ, which our friend Bill Osterly, God love him.
Yep, God love him.
Received that award.
Well deserved.
Was the IEDC's 5 E's.
Yeah.
Could you talk just for a minute or two about what they are and why they are important?
Yeah, I'd love to. So after we got to yes on accepting the role of Secretary of Commerce, then it was, then the views and the ideas start to percolate, and they start to fly around in your brain about, how can I make a difference? How can I make a difference? Where's the optimal place to spend your time? Where's the low hanging fruit for the state and the highest opportunity for the state? And the governor and I spent a lot of time together on that, and there's a long list, and that we oddly were pretty aligned, but this is a really cool list. But you gotta boil that down into bite-sized pieces, right, and digestible pieces. And so out of that, goals and aspirations for the state came 5 themes, and those 5 themes are the built environment. Our first E is environment, or the built environment. Our second E is an economy of the future with industries of the future. And our third E is entrepreneurship. Our fourth E is the energy transition. And what role is our state going to play in the energy transition since it's here? And then our fifth E is external engagement and telling the story about the great things about Indiana and why Indiana is so great. Indiana, we're all humble, here, and we don't talk about ourselves, and we don't really brag about all the great attributes. But other people who know the quality of this state and the way we conduct ourselves, they ask us, why don't you tell your story more? So that fifth E, external engagement, is super important, is to tell our story, because those are assets in our state business life. Our good reputation for fiscal management and innovation, and the list goes on. Those are assets, and we're just not using them. So, yeah.
May I add another E that's close to my heart?
Yeah.
And that would be enlist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Indiana has so much potential in the defense sector.
Yeah.
It's already doing so much, but
Yes.
I know Governor Holcomb, a
Yes.
Navy veteran,
Yes.
As an Army veteran,
Yes.
I
Soft
get a lot
spot.
of
Soft spot.
That's right.
Soft spot.
There's so much potential there, but then there's also a lot of competition among other states, especially states on the coast where the Navy could have like a bigger presence per se. But how does Indiana capitalize on such a terrific spot within the United States?
Yes.
In terms of the crossroads of America and the deep patriotic sense that Hoosiers have. It's just a few years ago that Indiana had the 4th largest National Guard in the country.
Right. Yeah.
What's the potential there?
It's significant. I mean, so your E is excellent, right? Enlist, and Indiana is indeed patriotic. We've got a governor that's a Navy vet, and our there's Hoosiers everywhere that served and lifted our country up, not only our state. And so it's a super important E, and I'm going to add 2 E's, education and equity, that we talked about the other day, that are also important, and they wrap and support the other 5 E's. But the defense opportunities in our state are numerous, and there's a lot of upside there. I think we need to spend some more energy on it. We're trying to do that at the IDC. We've got Crane Naval Warfare Center in southern Indiana, and man, there's a lot of smart people doing a lot of important work down there, a lot. And I've really enjoyed the first 5 months getting to know them and what they do and how important it is. And so leveraging that talent is good. And then some of the aviation engineering that's going on at Purdue. In the defense industry. We have some really important defense contractors in northern Indiana too, producing some. And then we have, which is interesting, we've got a lot of small companies producing important parts for military and some of the larger contractors. So the governor's got a goal of tripling defense spending in his term, and we're working hard on that. It's important.
The IEDC recently announced a study. It was funding a study to examine Indiana's startup economy. What's the impetus for this initiative? What do you hope comes out of it?
For the startup economy? The world's evolving and technology is evolving, and we've got this incredible advanced manufacturing DNA. Indiana builds things, and and that's super important to our economy. But even manufacturing is advancing through technology, right? And so technology is everywhere, and Indiana's got such good educational facilities. We have incredible universities with incredible talent, and I think it's a wide open field for us to run in as a state, using our great universities, using our young talent, and innovating and leading in the technology sector. And that produces jobs tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, that will power our economy and empower our young people. I like to say in my commentary, I'm working for the fifth grader at Evansville schools or the sixth grader at Fort Wayne schools, because building an economy of the future where they can graduate from one of our great educational locations or universities, and then stay here in a technology job, or even an advanced manufacturing job, or a manufacturing job. I don't care, but stay here.
Well, that was, I can ask, I was saying that you were born here, you're educated here, you stayed here with your business.
Yeah.
How do we both convince people who want to be Hoosiers and people who are already Hoosiers to stay here? I was in the Army and left and was offered a job when I was stationed in New Mexico. They said, hey, go to New Mexico State and we can give you a job in the Army doing whatever. And I was like, I want to go home.
Right. Yep.
How do you make Indiana as attractive as possible? It's often mentioned, you mentioned it in your speech. Mm-hmm. No mountains, no beach, no Broadway per se.
Yep.
So what is it that can draw that talent?
It's a great opportunity in a career, in a profession. It is a meaningful opportunity, and not only to raise a family, and to have competitive wages, but interesting work, and if you do that, then people do really love this place. Even the people who come here for Salesforce, or they're working here for Amazon or for Google, and they get here and they don't know a lot about Indiana until they get here for work, or they go work at Saab in West Lafayette. They love it. That's the common theme we hear is once we get them here, they love it and they don't leave. Convincing the 75,000 graduating students to stay is a huge opportunity for this, for the IDC and for the state. And you do that by providing really interesting, cool work in industries of the future. Or there's plenty of people that want to work in our robust manufacturing sector too. So there's in a wide array of employment opportunities is really the focus.
There are several folks who we both know who I would classify as genuine and devoted Hoosier cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Our friend Bill Benner would be one of them.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
But another one is the current president of Purdue University.
Yeah.
How important was it to the state that Mitch Daniels not only stayed in state, but he could have retired, that he took on another job?
Yeah. Yeah.
Here.
We had a lunch, I don't know, a couple weeks ago that was supposed to be an hour and ended up being 2 hours. And he is an amazing person. And not only did he, kind of write the trajectory of our state back in 2004, 2005, and we were blessed to have him for his 2 terms. And he put us on, we're 18 years now with a balanced budget and a AAA credit rating, right? And we're hanging on to that, and we've got good fiscal management, and all the ways that I said Indiana's winning earlier, we're winning. Mitch Daniels is and his team, Eric Oglum is on that team. So I'm gonna make sure that the entire team and all the people that he hired around him get equal due, because it was a team effort. And Mitchell would be the first guy to tell you that. But for him to land at Purdue was it was genius by the trustees, and Mike Berghoff, was right in the middle of that. I think
Bill Osterly was right in the middle of that. Bill Osterly
was in the middle of that, and Keith Kroc was right in the middle of that.
Fred Klipsch.
Fred Klipsch. So all of them, and then he's done it again. He's just doing it again. West Lafayette's growing like a weed because of, it's a mini state of Indiana going on up there. I mean, it's innovative. It's out front. It's out on its heels. It's doing things that are counter to, norms, like, keeping tuition low, at the same time growing. So it's just, we're so blessed.
My son's a junior at Purdue. The tuition flatlining has been very beneficial.
It's unbelievable.
It's made a difference because now it's like, okay, if you want to go to law school, Andrew, we'll have money left over for you to go to law school.
Absolutely.
We have a few more questions with Secretary of Commerce Brad Chambers before we get to the 5 questions. You mentioned something about Mitch Daniels' staff. Again, you led me right into my next question.
How about that?
When people used to say, hey, Robert, I'm going to have a meeting with Greg Ballard, like, Mayor Ballard, like, what should I say? And the first words I would say to that question every single time without fail was, compliment his staff.
Right.
He's enormously proud of the people with whom, and I wasn't working for him anymore, so I wasn't talking about myself, obviously, but I'm like, he's enormously proud of the people for whom he works.
Right.
You have made some hires at the IEDC.
I have.
Friends of mine, David Rosenberg, Ann Lathrop, of course, Laurel Judkins, and others who are brilliant, talented, collaborative, smart. How proud are you that you've able to capture that talent here?
I'm proud as a peacock, and I tell them that. And we got in our EVP meeting the other day, and I'm like, I was so excited for this meeting because it's been 5 months of trying to build this cool team, and so super excited to bring this talent to bear because it isn't about me; it's about us. And there is no I in team, and that's true. And day one at the IDC was about assessing culture and assessing esprit de corps and being mission focused and buying into a fresh aspirational vision to shoot higher for the state. And it takes leaders to do that and leadership to do that. And so my focus has been for 5 months putting in a great senior leadership team, and great they are. And everybody else at the IDC is too. These are hardworking public servants, mission focused, and I think they're feeling the energy, that this leadership team is bringing, and it's pretty darn exciting. I got to be honest.
And I only mentioned the 3 whom I know the best, but there are so many more.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Dave Roberts. He has been holding together innovation and entrepreneurship by himself, really, and now he's got some resources. Now he's got a spotlight on him. Now he's got a wind at his back to go out and make a difference in a big way. Because I'll give you one example. We were at our Christmas party the other day for the IDC celebrating the 5 months, and one of our data associates came up to me, and she's terrific, and she said, the IDC engine is there's 6 cylinders. She goes, but it seems in some ways that we've only been running on 1 or 2, and now we finally got all 3, 4, 5, 6 cylinders moving, and that's the cylinder of entrepreneurship, the cylinder of external engagement, this cylinder of defense, and the cylinder of just business development. So all cylinders are cranking away, trying to do good stuff for the state. So it's pretty fun.
In preparation for this podcast, I watched your interview last week, I think, with Gary Dick a few weeks ago. Chief Executive Magazine just ranked Indiana the 5th best state for business. What makes our state so business friendly and attractive to companies looking to expand within Indiana or bring their operations here?
Yeah. I don't think we have enough time on the podcast for me to get through the list, but I'll start with the governor gives his cell phone out to every business CEO that he meets. And he means it, and so do I. Call me if you have a problem. If you got a permitting problem, call me. It starts there. And businesses, by our very nature, are risk assessors. So we're looking for risk mitigation, right? We're looking for stability, and so when you get the senior officials in a state look you in the eye and say, "We got you." Number one, and number two, then it's just cost of doing business, responsiveness, our permitting, our permitting process led by the senior leaders at DNR and IDEM and Department of Transportation. They're incredible. They're business focused and business friendly, and they want to get these business humming along quickly and support them. Low tax rates.
That's an underrated point you just made about, as someone, I've had my little one-man veteran business for 11 years now, but navigating the bureaucracy, having someone at the IEDC or at PTAC has helped me greatly navigate the bureaucracy, where before 5 or 6 years ago, I encountered it and I just backed away and go, I'm not going to mess with it.
Yeah.
That is what you just said is so critical to an entrepreneur who's just trying to make a living and feels like they're just getting hit above the head all the time.
Speed matters. And I said this the other day. When you're an entrepreneur and you're investing your capital, I don't care if it's $1 or it's $10,000 or it's $1 million, the speed that capital gets invested and then generates a return back to you is critical to success or failure. And what slows that capital coming back and that return coming back is bureaucracy. And so if we can be a state that, gets out of the way and does its job. I'm not saying we don't do our job, but get out of the way. And so that capital can get invested and get its return quickly, we'll continue to thrive.
Caitlin and Diana at PTAC, I'm in your debt more than I could ever possibly express.
Yeah.
Last question before we get to the 5 questions is something that you mentioned a few minutes ago, actually, and that is quality and quantity. Is there a competition between quality of job attracted or produced and the quantity of jobs attracted or produced? Is it a false choice or is it a real choice?
It's a really, really, really good and important and tough question, and there isn't a great answer to it that will, I'll be able to articulate, because a job in a community that's got 6% unemployment and is in a rural area, and it may not be terrific in Hamilton County, but it's really terrific there. So you kind of got to see the job and its surroundings and its location. I mean, I think the first answer is there is no real bad job, right? We want people employed, period. And if there's jobs available for people of all walks of life, that's important. It's really about where we want to go in the future and where we're going to focus our efforts and our energies and our enthusiasm as a state, in what will grow our economy, right, and keep up with the rest of the country. Indiana is, like you said, 5th best in the country. But why can't that be 4th best or 3rd best or 2nd best or 1st? And that's my aspiration, right? I mean, let's shoot for the stars, and if we land at 2nd, that's better than 5th. And so that's the energy I bring, I think, and the aspiration but it's focusing on good quality growth for our economy into the future, a sustainable growth.
And do you get the sense, I bet it's more than a sense, do you know for a fact that other states are looking at Indiana? It's a copycat league. It's a copycat world.
Yep.
And they're thinking Indiana's doing X, Y, and Z.
Yep.
We need to do X, Y, and Z. A great example is the Indiana Sports Corp, which has been duplicated throughout the country.
Yeah, great question. Our sports, first and foremost, our sports ecosystem and our ability to put on major events is unparalleled, really. It is for a community of our size. We punch above our weight every time, in just about every event. And so we are, highly, highly regarded in that regard. I spent the first month or 6 weeks as Secretary of Commerce talking to other Secretaries of Commerce around the country. I want to get their views. I want to understand their perceptions of how they view Indiana. And it was all very favorable. And by the way, it was a nice group of people, very sharing with the way they view their jobs, the way they view their states, and the way they view Indiana. Indiana is viewed well. We're competitive and we're tough. But we also, the market changes every day, right? The NASDAQ and the Dow, the numbers are different every day. So the market's changing every day. The market for economic development is changing every day too. And as a state, we need to make sure we keep up with that change and we adapt to that change, and we have the very best tools to compete and continue to compete with North Carolina and Ohio and Georgia and Texas. I don't limit our ability to compete with the best, because I think we are the best. And
clearly Indiana has made its mark worldwide.
It has. I mean, we set a record with the number of foreign companies investing in Indiana this year. This year will be another record. And again, I'm only 5 months on the job, so I'm not taking any of that credit. I'm telling you, we have a very good team, and that team should and does take that credit. Okay, we've got a really good team, and we're the largest employer of Japanese firms in the world. So, other than Japan, by the way, in the United States. How about that? I'll qualify for the United States. We are punching above our weight there, and the ability to attract foreign-owned companies, because we care. You know, Toyota's got a big presence. Honda's got a big presence in our state and others, because we do care, and our workers are and our employees are second to none. So,
you're listening to the Leaders and Legends podcast. Our guest is Indiana Secretary of Commerce, Brad Chambers. I'm going to ask one last question and just answer it very quickly before we get to the 5 questions, because I meant to ask it earlier.
Yep.
The first time we ever talked on the phone was about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was working in the mayor's office, and you were planning Cityway.
Yeah.
And I took the courageous stand of saying, I don't know about this.
Yeah.
And obviously how wrong I was. I think we had a great conversation. My reasonings made sense to you, although ultimately I was proven way wrong.
Yeah.
I used to live there. It's a beautiful place. What do you think when you drive by one of your signature properties and just go, who'd have thought?
Yeah, who'd have thought? Well, there was a vision, and I give the credit to John Lucklider and Steve Van Zillen at Lilly, who had the inspiration, and they called us. I give them the credit for calling us too on that. And then we had the inspiration, and the creativity, and the determination to make a place, create a place, and it is a place. It is live, work, play, study, and stay. It's a built environment that we're super proud of as a company. And you've got great diversity of residential housing there. You've got a really cool art-laden boutique hotel that serves our business community really well. You've got medical offices. You've got a beautiful YMCA that adds and contributes to that neighborhood. You've got retail shops and restaurants, and you've got it in a very urban, walkable streetscape, right? And it just so happens to be, it's literally a sandwich from Banker's Life or now Grandbridge in our CBD. So it's vibrant. There's over 1,000 people live there. I mean, it's a pretty big community, but it doesn't feel it. It feels like it's just an urban neighborhood that's grown up through the years. And so super proud of it. And it was a really interesting public-private partnership. Mayor Ballard and his team, your team, leaned in on that. It was fantastic. I mean, it was keep in mind, it was a middle of a recession too, right?
That's right.
So Lilly was a partner. We were obviously a partner. The city was a partner. The state was a partner. It was truly it's a beautiful example of a public-private partnership that changed a neighborhood.
I can't think of another development in my, in the last 15, 20 years that so completely changed a part of downtown like that did.
Yeah.
It's night and day. Matter of fact, other than remembering what Delaware and South towing looked like.
I've been there a few times myself. Yeah.
I can't remember what it looked like.
Right.
Favorite contemporary artist, favorite traditional artist, because we know how much you love art.
Okay. Well, my favorite today, contemporary artist, I'm going to give you 2. There's a Korean artist by the name of Doho Soo that's awesome. Sam Jones, Indianapolis artist that is now represented in New York City. He's amazing, by the way. He had a show at the IMA last year. And then Warhol. I love Warhol. So I give you 3. Sorry.
It's all right.
I've got a steel at home too. I love steels. And then who's my other?
Let me ask a question a different way.
Yeah.
If you could have any artist in history paint the portrait of you and your family, whom would you choose?
Oh gosh. So I can't remember the name because I'm old, 57, and so I'm having but it's the artist that did the Obama portrait. And,
yeah. He and his wife, and Mrs. Obama.
Yeah, and I've got it in my Instagram feed, so if you guys can help me out here. But and I know him and I track him, but I would. Who is it? Yes. Yeah.
Say it.
Kenda Wiley, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sorry I butchered that because I'm an art guy, but I just love his work, and it's cool. So I've got an app on my phone with all these artists, so I can my bad memory can get an assist here and there. But that's been a passion that's been growing for 25 years. And you can walk through our hotel and you'll see the Doho Sus and you'll see the Nick Caves and the it's fun stuff.
Here are the actual 5 questions.
Yeah.
We'll go through them quickly. Number one, what was your first job?
Golf course. I worked at a golf course, cleaning clubs, putting away carts. It was awesome. Loved it.
Like Caddyshack?
Mm-hmm. Just exactly like Caddyshack. Well, not exactly.
Did you caddy for the Dalai Lama?
Yeah, not the Dalai Lama. I caddied for my father, which is kind of like the Dalai Lama.
Did he grant you eternal consciousness?
He was the Dalai Lama in plaid pants. How about that?
Number 2, what was your first concert?
Phil Collins.
It's pretty good.
Yep.
Number 3, if you could suggest any book for someone to read, which book would you choose?
I love Sapiens. It's relevant. It's new. Have you read that? You got to read that.
I'm reading a book about the White Ship.
Okay.
That's a ship that sunk in the 12th century that completely changed the trajectory of English history.
Okay. All right.
Not the same, but
right. All right. Sapiens it's a super good fact-based book. And then there's another book that I think gives us all perspective. It's called Factfulness. Mm-hmm. And it gives the whole history of civilization. And so if you see the progress that's been made over, and it's in a book, right? So you can read it. It takes away the anxiety about what happens every day. Mm-hmm. It tells about infant mortality, and it tells about education. It tells about civil rights and human rights. And it shows what happens throughout our civilization and where we are today in 2021 compared to where we were 100 years ago and 1,000 years ago. It's incredible progress. And so that's helped relieve my anxiety about picking up the paper in the morning and seeing about
social media.
Factfulness and Sapiens.
Number 4, if you could witness any event in history, be there in person as it happens, which event would you choose?
Yeah, 2. I'm not going to give you one, but so I'm a builder. I love to build. I love to see buildings go up, and so I will go to my grave fascinated with the construction of the pyramids, and when that happened, and I just got done with a book about it. I just can't figure it out. It's just incredible what happened with the pyramids. And the second would be Jesus' feeding of the 5,000 on the Lake of Galilee, right? So how did
he's evoked quite often?
Is he?
He is in this. A lot of it's Temple on
the Mount. Yeah. The Sermon on the Mount. Yeah.
That's what I meant to say. Sermon on the Mount. Excuse me. Last question: if you could have dinner with anyone living today, 2 hours off the record, whom would you choose?
Well, I mean, wouldn't everyone want to have dinner with the Queen of England?
She'd be my top choice.
She's got 100 years of history pretty much, right? I mean, think about that when she was in her 20s. And
working during World War II.
Yeah, I'm not going to claim a Buckingham heritage, Buckingham Palace heritage, but it's awfully interesting too. The guy whose middle name is Buckingham, so
that's where it comes from. I didn't know your.
It's my mother's maiden name. Yeah.
I thought maybe you were just an English history fan. And
No,
what the hell?
It's my mother's maiden name, Beverly Buckingham Chambers.
So Queen Elizabeth, Her Majesty, Queen Elizabeth II is your choice.
That's my choice, yeah.
You have been listening to Leaders and Legends, a podcast presented by Veteran Strategies, a local veteran public relations enterprise, and sponsored by Girl Scouts of Central Indiana, Garmon Construction, Leaders and Legends, LLC, the Grand Hall and Conference Center at Historic Union Station, the McGinley's Golden Ace Inn, and McAllister Machinery, your friendly neighborhood Caterpillar dealer. Our guest today has been Indiana Secretary of Commerce, CEO of the Indiana Economic Development Corporation, and a friend, Brad Chambers.
Indeed.
It's great. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, and for doing this and inviting me on. And I've been a fan of yours since we started working together back in the Ballard days. So this is such a pleasure to be with you for an hour and have a conversation.
Thank you. That's very kind.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you very much for listening to Leaders and Legends, brought to you by Veteran Strategies Incorporated. If you want to contact us about this program or our menu of public relations services, please send us an email at robert@veteranstrategies.com. That's robert@veteranstrategies.com.